Hello, curious minds? Welcome to this intellectual journey. Today, we confront a figure who defies all modern classification. A man who refused to accept the boundaries between art and science, between passion and reason. We're talking about the last true Renaissance man. Is it possible that the same mind that wrote the most profound tragedy in German literature, Faust, also discovered a bone in the human skull and challenged Isaac Newton's optics? The answer is yes, and his name is Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Before we begin, a brief note. To bring this narration to life, I've used artificial intelligence tools to generate the images you see. Think of them as a canvas, a way to illustrate the ideas and the atmosphere of what we're telling you. They won't always be a literal representation, but rather a visual accompaniment. Our big question today is, how did Goethe manage to see unity in nature where others only saw fragments? And what does his vitalist philosophy have to say about our own search for meaning in an increasingly technologized and disconnected world? To understand Goethe, we must journey back to the 18th century, to the heart of the Holy Roman Empire. Born in Frankfurt in 1749, Goethe entered the world in an era of upheaval, right on the threshold between the strict Enlightenment and the eruption of sentiment. He grew up in an affluent home surrounded by books and art. From a young age, he displayed an insatiable curiosity. It wasn't enough for him to study law, which was his father's wish. He wanted to absorb the entire world. His mind was a sponge, soaking up languages, drawing, fencing, and cello. In his youth, Goethe spearheaded an explosive literary movement called Sturm und Drang, which translates to storm and stress. It was a rebellion against cold rationalism. They sought raw emotion, individual genius, and a wild connection with nature. The result of this youthful fervor was his first novel, The Sorrows of Young Werther. Imagine a global viral hit before the internet. Werther, a sensitive young artist who ends his own existence for love, unleashed a wave of hysteria across Europe. Goethe became an instant celebrity. Napoleon Bonaparte confessed to having read Werther 7 times. Young people dressed like the protagonist. But here's the twist. Goethe, the creator of this icon of romantic despair, chose not to follow that path. He chose life. He chose to build, not to give in to despair. Fleeing his own fame and seeking maturity, Goethe accepted an invitation to the court of Weimar. There, the young rebel transformed into a statesman. He managed mines, oversaw the war, organized finances. Practical reality tempered his poetic spirit. It's crucial to understand this. Goethe was not a writer secluded in an ivory tower. He was a man of action. He believed that thought only has value if it manifests in the world. This duality between the poet and the administrator is key to his philosophy. It was in Weimar where he cultivated his friendship with another giant, Friedrich Schiller. Together they defined Weimar classicism. They sought a perfect balance between reason and emotion, drawing inspiration from ancient Greece. They aimed to educate humanity through beauty. But the work that accompanied Goethe throughout his life, from his 20s until his death at 82, was Faust. It's not just a play, it's the spiritual confession of an entire era and the map of its author's soul. Let's talk about Faust. The legend existed before, but Goethe radically transformed it. In the traditional version, Faust sells his soul to the devil for pleasure and ends up in hell. For Goethe, the problem isn't pleasure, but stagnation. The pact Faust makes with Mephistopheles is very specific. Faust says, "If ever I say to the moment, 'Stay, you are so beautiful,' then you may take my soul." The condemnation isn't sinning, the condemnation is ceasing to strive, ceasing to grow. This is the central concept of Goethe's ethics, Streben, or constant striving. Humanity is saved as long as it keeps searching, keeps erring and learning. Error isn't the end, it's a necessary part of the path toward truth. Mephistopheles, the devil, is defined by Goethe as the spirit that always denies. It's the force of cynicism, destruction, and emptiness. But paradoxically, this force of evil is necessary to stimulate the activity of good. Evil awakens man from his slumber. In the second part of Faust, the work becomes cosmic. Faust travels through time, marries Helen of Troy, interacts with emperors, and develops engineering projects. It's an exploration of the entire cultural history of Western humanity. In the end, Faust finds satisfaction not in selfish pleasure, but in working for the community, reclaiming land from the sea. And even though he utters the fatal words, his soul is saved. Why? Because whoever strives constantly can be redeemed. Now, for an unexpected turn, Goethe used to say that he wasn't proud of his poetry, as others had done it better, but that in his century, he was the only one who knew the truth about color theory. Why would a poet obsess over optics? Here we delve into Goethe's scientific facet. He detested Isaac Newton's view. Newton said that white light contained all colors and that the prism separated them. For Goethe, this was a mathematical abstraction that killed the living experience. Goethe argued that color arises from the interaction between light and darkness. It's not just a wavelength, it's a boundary phenomenon. Yellow is light, attenuated by darkness. Blue is darkness, illuminated by light. It's a dance of polarities. Although modern physics sided with Newton regarding waves, Goethe's theory is fundamental for the physiology and psychology of perception. He studied how the eye creates colors after images and colored shadows. He placed the human subject at the center. This reveals his scientific method, phenomenology. Goethe believed that we shouldn't seek hidden causes behind nature, but rather observe phenomena as they present themselves until we understand their inner pattern. Not to torture nature, but to dialogue with it. His most lasting contribution was in biology, specifically in morphology. In fact, he coined the term morphology. Goethe sought the underlying unity in the diversity of living forms. He wanted to find the internal logic of growth. His obsession was the Urpflanze, or the primordial plant. He wasn't seeking a physical ancestral plant, but the archetype, the ideal model from which all plants are variations. He imagined that all parts of the plant, petals, stamens, sepals, are metamorphoses of the leaf. Imagine it. The leaf contracts to form the stem, expands to form the sepal, refines and colors itself to become a petal. Everything is the same basic form, transforming according to circumstances. It's a dynamic and fluid vision of life, a precursor to evolution. He also applied this to anatomy. In his time, it was believed that humans didn't possess the premaxillary bone, a part of the jaw present in other animals. They said this separated us from beasts. Goethe, convinced of nature's unity, sought it and found it. By finding this bone in the human embryo, he demonstrated that there's no magical biological leap between animals and man. We are part of the same great chain of being. This was a blow to anthropocentric pride. Decades before Darwin published his theory, Goethe's philosophy of nature can be summarized in two major principles: polarity and intensification. Polarity is the engine of the world. Inhale and exhale, systole and diastole, light and darkness. Without tension between opposites, there is no life. Intensification, or Steigerung, is the vertical impulse. Nature doesn't just repeat itself, it tends to surpass itself, to refine itself, to ascend toward more complex and conscious forms. It's an upward spiral of development. This leads us to his religious vision, which was deeply pantheistic. Influenced by the philosopher Spinoza, Goethe saw God not as an external creator pulling the strings, but as the immanent force in every rock, every leaf, every storm. For him, studying nature was an act of worship. He needed no churches or dogmas. If you wanted to know the divine, you only had to observe with loving attention the wing of a butterfly or the structure of a crystal. The infinite is in the finite, but Goethe also recognized a dark and mysterious force in human life, the demonic. Mind you, not the diabolical. He referred to the Greek daimon, an irrational, creative, and destructive force that possesses certain individuals and changes the world's destiny. Napoleon, Byron, or even Goethe himself were examples of demonic figures. People who act beyond conventional morality, driven by an uncontrollable internal necessity. It's the pure energy of life that breaks established structures. Faced with this potential chaos, Goethe proposed the ideal of Bildung. This German word is difficult to translate, but it means formation, self-cultivation, the construction of oneself. It's not just about learning facts, it's about sculpting your own personality as a work of art. Bildung is a duty. We have the responsibility to develop all our human capacities. To travel, to read, to love, to suffer, to observe. Everything must be integrated into a harmonious personality. The goal of life is to become fully who one is. In his later years, Goethe became the sage of Weimar. Visitors from all over Europe made pilgrimages to see him. He conversed with Eckermann, leaving a record of daily wisdom ranging from politics to literary criticism. However, he also viewed the advent of the industrial era with concern. In Faust, he introduces the homunculus, an artificial human created in a test tube by a former student, Wagner. It's pure mind without a body, science without a soul. Goethe feared that technology and specialization would fragment humanity. He feared that we would become swift but empty. He criticized what he called the swift cosmic, the acceleration of modern life that prevents slow and deep contemplation. Today, in the 21st century, Goethe is more relevant than ever. We live in an age of extreme fragmentation. We know a lot about very little. Goethe reminds us of the need for a holistic vision. He invites us to reconnect science with art, data with meaning. His scientific approach anticipated ecology. By viewing nature as a living and interconnected organism and not as a clockwork machine, Goethe laid the groundwork for understanding the environment not as a resource to exploit, but as a system to respect. The concept of world literature, or Weltliteratur, is also his. In an era of nationalisms, Goethe read Chinese, Persian, and Sanskrit literature. He believed that poetry was a common heritage of humanity, a bridge for understanding between cultures. When he died in 1832, his last words were supposedly, "More light." Whether it was a physical request to open the window or a spiritual yearning, it perfectly summarizes his journey, a relentless search for clarity and truth. Goethe teaches us that we don't have to choose between being analytical or being creative. We can be both. He teaches us that error is fertile, that nature is our teacher, and that in the end what matters is action guided by love and understanding. So the next time you see a flower, don't just see an object. Try to see the process, the metamorphosis, the invisible force that drives it to be. Try to look with Goethe's eyes. Perhaps you'll discover that the world is much richer than you thought. I hope this journey through the mind of the last universal genius has sparked a flame in you. There's so much more to explore in his work, his poems, his travels to Italy, his theory of clouds. Goethe is a universe in himself. Thank you for joining me in this analysis. If this video has made you think, that's the best reward. Culture isn't something dead in museums. It's a living conversation we hold among all of us, across time. Which facet of Goethe resonates most with you? The passionate romantic, the observant scientist, or the wise philosopher? Leave me your opinion in the comments. I'd love to read them and discuss them with you all. If you want to continue exploring humanity's great ideas with rigor and passion, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. Let's keep learning together. Until next time, seekers of truth, remember, as Goethe himself said, knowing is not enough, we must apply. Willing is not enough, we must do. Go out there and make your lives your own masterpiece. Let's delve a little deeper into an aspect we briefly touched upon, his journey to Italy. For Goethe, crossing the Alps wasn't tourism, it was a rebirth. He secretly escaped the court of Weimar under a false name, suffocated by his duties. In Italy, Goethe discovered the sensuality and light of the South. He spent 2 years drawing ruins, studying botany in Sicily, and living a bohemian life in Rome. It was there that he completed his transformation from dark romanticism to luminous classicism. The concept of Weimar classicism isn't mere imitation, it's the search for inner law. Just as nature follows laws to create healthy organisms, art must follow laws of proportion and harmony to elevate the human spirit. Let's consider his relationship with music. Although he was friends with composers, Goethe had a complicated relationship with Beethoven. Beethoven was the embodiment of untamed and rebellious genius. Goethe, in his maturity, preferred order and restraint. It's said that when they were walking together and saw the imperial family, Goethe stepped aside and doffed his hat, while Beethoven continued walking, expecting the nobles to step aside. This anecdote illustrates two ways of understanding greatness. However, Goethe recognized the awe-inspiring power of Beethoven's music. He said that his Fifth Symphony was so potent he feared the house would collapse. He recognized the demonic in music, that force that drags you beyond reason. Let's return to his science. His theory of clouds is fascinating. Inspired by Luke Howard, who classified clouds, Goethe wrote poems dedicated to cirrus, cumulus, and stratus. For him, clouds were the purest form of constant metamorphosis. This demonstrates that for Goethe, poetry was a tool of knowledge. He didn't write poems about clouds just because they were pretty, but to understand their changing essence. Science and poetry were two languages to describe the same reality. Let's talk about his love life, which fueled his art. From Friederike Briand to Ulrike von Levetzow, with whom he fell in love at 74 years old. Each love brought him new youth and a new creative crisis. His relationship with Christiane Vulpius was a scandal, a working-class woman with whom he lived unmarried for years and had children. Weimar society rejected her, but Goethe loved her for her genuine and unpretentious nature. Goethe defended his home against Napoleon's French soldiers. Christiane saved his life by confronting the invaders. It was then that Goethe finally married her. He valued loyalty and courage above social conventions. Another key concept, stirb und werde, die and become. It's a line from one of his poems. It means that to grow, an old version of you must die. If you don't renew yourself, you're a shadowy guest upon the dark earth. Transformation is painful but vital. This idea resonates with modern psychology. The ego must break to expand. Goethe lived many lives in one. The libertine student, the suicidal poet, the serious bureaucrat, the rigorous scientist, the Olympian sage. He never remained static. It's interesting to note that Goethe was not a German nationalist in the narrow political sense. He considered himself a European. He criticized hatred between nations as something belonging to the lowest levels of culture. The more cultured one is, the more universal their suffering. His influence on later philosophers was massive. Hegel, Nietzsche, Steiner, Jung. Nietzsche, for example, saw in Goethe an anticipation of the Superman, Übermensch, a human being who has disciplined their inner chaos and become an autonomous totality. Rudolf Steiner based his entire anthroposophy on Goethean epistemology. He took Goethe's method of observation and applied it to the spiritual, Waldorf education, biodynamic agriculture. Everything has roots in Goethe's way of thinking, but not everything is perfect. Goethe also had his blind spots. He rejected the French Revolution for its violence and chaos. He preferred injustice over disorder. He was a conservative in politics, though a revolutionary in spirit. This shows us that even geniuses are children of their time and their prejudices. We shouldn't idolize him as a saint, but rather study him as a complex man. His fear of chaos was the reverse of his love for form and structure. Returning to Faust, the figure of Margaret or Gretchen is crucial. She represents innocence destroyed by Faust's intellectual and carnal desire. But in the end, it is she who intercedes for him in heaven. It is the eternal feminine that draws us upward. This concept of the eternal feminine isn't just about gender. It's about the quality of love, compassion, and intuitive receptivity in contrast to aggressive and rational conquest. Goethe sought to balance these two energies in the universe. His house in Weimar, which is now a museum, reflects his mind. It's filled with collections of rocks, plaster statues, engravings. It was a personal museum where every object had a story and a function in his study of the world. Imagine walking through those rooms. There at a standing desk, he wrote immortal verses while gazing at a garden. The connection between his physical space and his mental space was absolute. The environment molded his thought. A practical lesson from Goethe for us. Observe one single thing every day. Don't endlessly scroll. Stop in front of a tree, a cloud, or a person's face. Look at it until it becomes strange and new. Reclaim your capacity for wonder. Goethe called this the delicate gaze. A way of investigating that doesn't seek to dominate the object, but rather to intimately connect with it. In a world of resource exploitation, this delicate gaze could be the key to our ecological survival. Goethe's legacy is an invitation to wholeness. He tells us that we aren't biological machines in a dead universe. We are creative beings in a living and creative universe. We are nature becoming conscious of itself. As we close this chapter, think about your own life. Where do you need to apply Sturm und Wehrde? What part of you needs to die so you can move forward? Where are you stuck and need Faust's push? Goethe doesn't give us easy answers. He gives us tools. He gives us the prism to see colors, morphology to see change, and drama to understand our passions. He gives us a life lived to the fullest as an example. His work is an ocean. We've only sailed on the surface. I encourage you to read Conversations with Eckermann, or if you dare, Theory of Colors. You won't regret dialoguing with this giant. Thank you once again for your time and attention. In a world of noise, dedicating time to thought is a revolutionary act. You are part of that intellectual resistance. Keep curiosity alive. If this content brings you value, consider sharing it. Help us ensure the algorithm prioritizes culture and deep reflection. Together we can build a community of awakened minds. I'm your host on this journey through ideas. This has been an exploration of the thought of Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. I'll see you in the next analysis, where we'll continue unraveling the mysteries of the human condition. And remember, what is not begun today will never be finished tomorrow. Act now. See you soon.